The Great Hall of the Galactic Federation stretched wider than most cities. 12 massive seats formed a circle around the center floor. Each seat was built for a different alien species. Some were tall and narrow for the stick-like Vrex. Others were wide pools of liquid for the water-dwelling Aquari. The crystalline beings needed no seats at all. They simply floated in their energy fields. At the center of this huge room stood a small wooden chair. It looked tiny and simple compared to the grand alien seats around it. Dr. Yuna Kim sat in that chair. She was the only human in the room. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple blue suit from Earth. Next to the towering aliens around her, she looked very small. Commander Thok of the Vrex species stood up first. His body was 9 feet tall and covered in gray scales. His forearms moved as he spoke. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Fellow council members," Thok began, "we are here to decide if humans should join our federation. I have spent 2 years studying their species. What I found was disappointing." A large screen appeared in the air above the center of the room. Images of humans began to play. The first video showed human soldiers training. They ran slowly compared to Vrex warriors. They lifted weights that a Vrex child could handle easily. Many of them were breathing hard and sweating. "Look at their physical weakness," Thok said. "The average human can lift only twice their body weight. A Vrex can lift 10 times their weight. Humans run at 20 miles per hour at their fastest. We run at 60. The next video showed humans working in space. They wore thick suits and helmets. They moved carefully and slowly. The video cut to Vrex workers in the same environment. The Vrex needed no suits. They moved quickly and easily in the vacuum of space. They cannot survive in most environments. Without artificial help, Thok continued. They need special suits for space. They need breathing masks for thin air. They need heating systems for cold planets. They are completely dependent on their technology. Entity 7749 of the crystalline hive mind began to glow brighter. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. "Commander Thok speaks truth. We have also studied humans. Their minds are equally weak." New videos appeared on the screen. These showed humans crying. A woman wept as she said goodbye to someone at an airport. A man had tears in his eyes as he held a newborn baby. Children cried when they fell down on a playground. They leak water from their eyes when they feel strong emotions, Entity 7749 said. "This is a waste of body fluids. It serves no practical purpose. They do this when they are sad, happy, angry, or scared. Their emotions control them instead of the other way around." The Aquari representative, Ocean Singer Blue, rippled the water in her tank. Her voice bubbled as she spoke. "They form irrational attachments to other beings. We have observed human parents who will not leave their offspring even when it means death. This goes against all survival logic." More videos played. A human mother refused to evacuate from a burning building because her child was still inside. A human father worked 3 jobs to pay for his sick daughter's medicine. Human soldiers carried wounded comrades instead of leaving them behind to save themselves. They put the needs of individuals above the needs of the group, Ocean Singer Blue continued. "This makes them weak as a species. Strong species make logical choices. They save the many instead of the few." The hive queen of the insect collective clicked her mandibles. Her translated voice was sharp and quick. "Human minds are also fragmented. Each human thinks only for themselves. They have no shared consciousness, no group mind. They must use primitive speech to share ideas. This makes them slow and unreliable in group tasks." Dr. Yuna Kim listened to all of this without speaking. Her face showed no emotion. She took notes on a simple paper pad. Several aliens found this primitive. They could record information directly into their minds or computer systems. The Voidwalker representative, whose body was made of living shadow, spoke next. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Humans have short lifespans, 80 to 100 years at most. Many of our species live for thousands of years. How can beings with such brief lives gain wisdom or make long-term plans?" The screen showed charts comparing lifespans. Humans appeared as a tiny bar next to the massive bars representing alien lifespans. The crystalline beings lived for 50,000 years. The Voidwalkers existed for millions of years. Even the short-lived Aquari lived for 500 years. They spend 1/3 of their lives unconscious, the Void Walker continued. They call it sleep. During this time, they are completely helpless. They cannot work, fight, or even think clearly. This is another sign of their weakness. More evidence appeared on the screen. Humans sleeping in beds, completely unaware of their surroundings. The aliens showed how their own species either never slept or could remain alert even while resting. Commander Thok stood again. The most damning evidence is their inability to work together. Humans fight among themselves, constantly. They have wars over resources, beliefs, and territory. They cannot even agree on simple matters within their own species. How can they contribute to a galactic civilization? The screen filled with images of human conflicts throughout history. Wars, arguments, protests, and disagreements. The aliens saw humans shouting at each other, fighting, and refusing to cooperate. The elder of the timekeepers, whose body phased in and out of different time streams, spoke slowly. We have observed their decision-making process. It is chaotic and inefficient. They argue for hours about simple choices. They let emotions guide their logic. They make plans and then change them based on feelings rather than facts. As each alien species presented their evidence, the case against humanity grew stronger. The room filled with the sound of disapproval. Clicks, hisses, bubbles, and electronic sounds expressed the aliens' negative opinions. Finally, the great judge, a being of pure energy that had existed since the galaxy was young, spoke. Its voice was ancient and powerful. Dr. Unikim of Earth, you have heard the evidence against your species. Your people appear to be physically weak, emotionally unstable, short-lived, and unable to work together effectively. Do you have anything to say in defense of humanity before we make our final decision? Dr. Unikim stood up slowly. She was so small compared to the beings around her. She looked at each alien representative in turn. Her voice was calm and clear when she finally spoke. Honored members of the Galactic Federation, she said, I have listened to your concerns about my species. You have presented much evidence about human limitations. I do not disagree with your observations. Humans are indeed physically weaker than most of your species. We do cry when we feel strong emotions. We do form deep attachments to other individuals. We do have short lives and need sleep. She paused and looked around the room again. However, I would like to request one thing before you make your final judgment. I ask that you review one more piece of evidence. This evidence comes from an event that happened 6 months ago on the mining colony of Kepler 442b. After you see this evidence, I believe you may view human nature in a different way. The great judge's energy field pulsed thoughtfully. Very well, Dr. Kim. Show us this evidence. But know that our patience is limited. If this does not change our minds, humanity's application will be denied permanently. Dr. Yuna Kim nodded and activated her simple Earth-made device. Thank you. What you are about to see happened when the mining colony came under attack by the Ravager fleet. I think you will find it educational. The screen above them went dark, preparing to show the events that would change everything the aliens thought they knew about human weakness. The screen in the Galactic Council chamber flickered to life. The aliens saw a peaceful mining colony on a distant planet. Kepler 442b was a rocky world with red soil and 2 small suns. The colony had been built into the side of a mountain. 50,000 beings from 12 different species lived and worked there together. The mining operation was massive. Huge machines dug deep tunnels into the planet's core. They extracted rare metals that were needed across the galaxy. The work was dangerous, but profitable. Most species sent their strongest workers to places like this. Dr. Yuna Kim's voice narrated the recording. 6 months ago, this colony was home to beings from all of your species. 2,000 humans worked there as engineers and terraforming specialists. The humans were not the strongest workers, but they were good at solving technical problems. The screen showed the colony during a normal day. Rex workers used their powerful arms to move heavy equipment. Crystalline beings floated through the tunnels, their light helping others see in the dark. Aquari managed the water recycling systems. Humans worked at computer stations and repaired broken machinery. The humans looked so small next to the other workers, Commander Thok observed. I remember thinking they seemed out of place. Suddenly, the peaceful scene changed. Warning sirens began to wail across the colony. Red lights flashed everywhere. The screen showed workers of all species looking up at the sky in fear. At 14:30 colony time, long-range sensors detected an incoming fleet. Dr. Yuna Kim continued. The Ravager fleet. 47 ships carrying the most dangerous pirates in the galaxy. The aliens in the council chamber knew about the Ravagers. They were a mixed group of criminals from many species. They attacked colonies and space stations. They stole everything valuable and took prisoners to sell as slaves. No one had ever successfully fought them off. The screen showed the Ravager, ships approaching the planet. They were dark, ugly vessels covered in weapons. The largest ship was 5 miles long. It looked like a giant metal beast with glowing red eyes. Inside the colony, chaos began. The emergency protocols activated automatically. Loudspeakers announced the evacuation procedures in 12 different languages. Each species had its own emergency plan based on their natural abilities and survival instincts. The Virex workers immediately headed for the deep tunnels. Their thick scales could protect them from debris, and they could survive in the underground caves for weeks. The crystalline beings began to dim their light and gathered in groups. When they worked together, they could create powerful energy shields. The Aquari rushed to the water treatment facilities. They could hide in the large tanks and survive even if the surface was destroyed. The insect collective workers formed tight groups and began building barricades using their natural construction abilities. Each species followed their survival instincts, Entity 7749 observed. This is logical behavior during an attack. But the humans did something different. Instead of running to safety, they began moving toward the most dangerous areas of the colony. The screen showed human engineers running toward the main reactor building. Human medics grabbed their emergency supplies and headed for the residential areas where families lived. Han Wu was the chief human engineer. He was a tall man with kind eyes and calloused hands from years of technical work. When the alarm started, his team expected him to lead them to the emergency shelters. Instead, he gathered them in the main engineering bay. The reactor needs to be secured, Han Wu told his team. If the Ravagers damage it, the explosion will kill everyone on the planet. We need to implement emergency shutdown procedures. One of the younger engineers, a woman named Mi, looked scared. But Han Wu, the reactor bay is the most likely target. The Ravagers always go for the power source first. We should evacuate with everyone else. Han Wu shook his head. Someone has to stay and protect the reactor. If we don't, 50,000 people will die when this place explodes. The screen showed the human engineering team working frantically at their control stations. Outside, the first Ravager ships were already entering the planet's atmosphere. Energy weapons began firing at the colony's defensive systems. In another part of the colony, human medic Sunja was doing something equally dangerous. She had organized a team of human medical workers to evacuate the injured and elderly who could not move quickly on their own. Sunja was a small woman with silver hair and gentle hands. She had been treating patients for 30 years. When the evacuation order came, she saw that several alien patients in the medical bay could not be moved safely. We need to get them to the emergency shelters, she told her team. That old Vrex elder has a broken spine. The crystalline child is too young to maintain its energy field. The Aquari patient needs constant water circulation or it will die. Her assistant, a young man named Tae Ho, looked worried. Soon, the medical bay is not protected. When the Ravagers attack, this will be one of the first buildings hit. We should leave them and save ourselves. Soon, began loading medical supplies into portable containers. We are medics, Tae Ho. We do not leave patients behind. Ever. Help me move them to the shelters. Across the colony, similar scenes played out. Human pilot Min Ho received direct orders to evacuate all human personnel immediately. A transport ship was waiting to take them to safety. But Min Ho looked at the long lines of alien workers still waiting for evacuation. There are not enough ships, he told the evacuation coordinator over the radio. The other species' ships are full, but hundreds of workers are still trapped here. The coordinator's voice crackled through the communication system. Minho, you have your orders. Take the humans and leave. The other species will find their own way to safety. Minho looked at the frightened faces of Rex, crystalline, and Aquari workers who were still waiting. Some of them were young. Others were old and moved slowly. All of them looked scared. I am not leaving without them, Minho said. My ship can carry 50 more passengers. I will take whoever needs evacuation, regardless of species. The first Ravager attack hit the colony's outer defenses. Explosions rocked the ground. Buildings began to collapse. The screen showed debris falling from the sky like deadly rain. Most alien workers had reached their species-designated safe zones, but the humans were still scattered across the colony. They were in the reactor bay, the medical centers, the evacuation points, and the damaged areas where people were trapped. Commander Thok watched the screen with growing confusion. This makes no sense. Why are the humans not following proper evacuation procedures? They are putting themselves in unnecessary danger. Dr. Yuna Kim paused the recording. That is exactly what the other species said at the time. But keep watching. What happens next will show you something important about human nature. The screen resumed playing. The Ravager ships were now directly overhead, their weapons charged up for the main assault. The humans in the colony were still working frantically, not to save themselves, but to save everyone else. The real test was about to begin, Dr. Yuna Kim said quietly. This is where you will see what humans really are when everything is at stake. The Ravager fleet opened fire on the mining colony. The screen in the council chamber showed bright flashes of energy weapons hitting the surface of Kepler 442b. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers across the mountainside. Buildings that had taken years to build disappeared in seconds. The colony's defense systems tried to fight back. Automated turrets fired at the attacking ships. Force field generators created protective barriers over the most important buildings, but the Ravagers had overwhelming firepower. One by one, the defensive systems were destroyed. The outer wall has been breached, announced the colony's computer system. All personnel must evacuate to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. The screen showed chaos inside the colony. Smoke filled the tunnels. Emergency lights flashed red and yellow. The sound of explosions echoed through the corridors. Most of the alien workers had reached their safe zones, but people were still trapped in the damaged areas. Han Wu and his engineering team worked frantically in the reactor bay. Sparks flew from damaged control panels. The massive reactor core hummed with dangerous energy. If it exploded, the blast would destroy half the planet. Cooling system is failing, reported Eunmi, sweat running down her face. We have maybe 10 minutes before the core overheats. Han Wu's fingers flew over the control interfaces. Reroute. Power from the backup generators. We need to stabilize the magnetic containment field. Outside the reactor bay, a Ravager boarding party had landed. These were the most dangerous pirates in the galaxy. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that could cut through solid metal. Their job was to capture valuable prisoners and steal anything worth taking. The Ravager captain was a massive creature with 6 arms and teeth like knives. He led his team through the damaged corridors, looking for the most important areas to attack first. Find the reactor, the captain ordered his troops. Control the power, control the colony. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Sun Jia was facing her own crisis. The building had been hit by several energy blasts. Part of the roof had collapsed. Water pipes had burst, flooding the lower levels. But she still had patients who could not be moved. The old Vrex elder, whose name was Granak, lay on a medical bed with a broken spine. His gray scales were pale with pain. "Leave me, human," he whispered. "Save yourself. I am old and useless." Sun Jia checked his medical readings. "You are not useless, Granak. You have lived for 300 years. You have wisdom that younger beings need." She turned to her assistant, Taeho. "Help me move his bed to the emergency shelter. We can use the anti-gravity lifts." Taeho looked at the damaged ceiling above them. More debris was falling with each explosion. "Sun Jia, this building is going to collapse. We need to leave now." But Sun Jia was already connecting the portable life support systems to the Vrex elder's bed. Then we better move quickly. In another part of the colony, the crystalline child was in even greater danger. The young being was only 50 years old, which was like a human toddler. It could not maintain its energy field without help from adult crystallines. But the adult crystallines had evacuated to their own safe zone, deep underground. The child's name was Bright Song. It flickered weakly in the damaged corridor where it had been separated from its family. Its light was fading quickly. Without help, it would die within minutes. Human rescue worker Kyung-soo found the child during his search of the residential areas. He was a young man who worked in colony maintenance. He had no special training for this kind of emergency, but he could not leave the child alone. "I do not know how to help crystalline beings," he said into his radio, "but I cannot leave it here." The evacuation coordinator's voice was filled with static. "Kyung-soo, you need to evacuate immediately. The residential section is collapsing. That child is not your responsibility." Kyung-soo looked at the fading light of Bright Song. The child was trying to communicate, but its energy was too weak. "It is just a baby," he said. "I am not leaving it." He carefully picked up the small crystalline being. It was warm and light, like holding a piece of living sunlight. He did not know if he was hurting it, but he knew he could not abandon it. The evacuation point. Pilot Min-ho faced the hardest choice of all. His transport ship was loaded with passengers from different species. The ship was designed to carry 30 people, but he had packed in 50. Any more would be dangerous. But outside the ship, more people were still waiting. The Ravager attack had trapped 847 beings in the lower levels of the colony. The tunnels leading to their location had collapsed. The only way to reach them was through the most dangerous part of the colony. The other species' evacuation ships had already left. Their captains had calculated the risks and decided it was too dangerous to attempt a rescue. They had saved their own people and departed for safety. Min-ho received a direct order from the Human Evacuation Command. "Min-ho, you are ordered to depart immediately. The colony is lost. Save the people you have and leave the rest." Min-ho looked at his passenger manifest. He had humans, Vrex, crystallines, Aquari, and others aboard his ship. But he also had the coordinates of the trapped survivors below. "I cannot leave them," he said into his radio. "There are children down there. Families. People who trusted us to help them." His co-pilot, a woman named Hai-rin, looked worried. "Min-ho, if we go down there, we might not make it back. The rescue mission has a 73% chance of failure. We could lose everyone." Min-ho started the ship's engines. "Then we better make sure we succeed." The most heartbreaking scene was happening in the emergency shelter deep underground. Hundreds of beings from different species were crowded into a space designed for much fewer people. The air was thick and hard to breathe. The sound of explosions above made everyone jump with fear. In one corner of the shelter, a young human mother named Hai-jin held her 3-year-old daughter, So Young. The little girl was crying from fear and confusion. She did not understand why everyone was scared. She did not know why loud noises kept coming from above. "Mommy, I want to go home," So Young whispered, tears running down her cheeks. Jin held her daughter close. "We will go home soon, baby. But first we need to wait here where it is safe." But the shelter was not really safe. The Ravagers had found the entrance. They were setting up explosives to blast through the sealed doors. Everyone inside knew that capture meant slavery or death. Some of the alien species began to complain about So Young's crying. A Vrex warrior named Kothar hissed at Hyojin. "Silence the young one. Its noise will give away our position." An Aquari elder agreed. "The child's distress calls are unnecessary. They serve no survival purpose." Even some of the other humans looked uncomfortable. The crying was loud in the enclosed space. It reminded everyone of their desperate situation. Hyojin looked around, at all the frightened faces. She saw Vrex children with their scales trembling. She saw young crystallines flickering weakly with fear. She saw Aquari youngsters making soft, bubbling sounds of distress. All the children were scared. All of them needed comfort. But instead of silencing her daughter, Hyojin made a choice that would change everything. She began to sing. The song was a simple Korean lullaby that her own mother had sung to her when she was small. It was about a little rabbit who got lost in the forest but found its way home by following the sound of its mother's voice. Her voice was soft and gentle. It carried through the shelter like a warm breeze. The words were in Korean, but somehow, the meaning was clear to everyone who heard it. Something amazing happened. The other children in the shelter began to quiet down. The Vrex hatchlings stopped their distress clicking. The crystalline younglings' panicked flashing slowed to a steady rhythm. Even the HFY children's bubbling became more peaceful. "What is she doing?" whispered Commander Thok as he watched the recording in the council chamber. "This makes no tactical sense." But Dr. Yuna Kim just smiled. "Keep watching," she said. "You are about to see the true strength of humanity." Hai-jin's voice filled the crowded emergency shelter. The Korean lullaby seemed to wrap around everyone like a warm blanket. The melody was simple, but beautiful. It spoke of home, safety, and love in a way that crossed all language barriers. She sang. Something remarkable began to happen. The fear in the shelter started to change. It did not disappear, but it became manageable. The panic that had gripped everyone began to fade. So Young stopped crying and nestled closer to her mother. Her small fingers traced patterns on Hai-jin's arm as the familiar song calmed her fears. But she was not the only child who responded to the music. Crix, a young Vrex whose scales were still soft and pale, had been clicking his mandibles in distress. The sound was sharp and painful in the enclosed space. But as Hai-jin sang, his clicking slowed and then stopped. He tilted his reptilian head to listen to the strange human sounds. Near the back of the shelter, 3 crystalline younglings had been flashing bright colors of fear and confusion. Their light was harsh and chaotic, making it hard for others to see. But the lullaby seemed to synchronize their energy patterns. Their flashing became steady and gentle, like breathing made of light. The HFY children had been making distressed bubbling sounds that reminded everyone of drowning. But as the human song continued, their bubbles became rhythmic and peaceful. The sound changed from panic to something like underwater music. Even the adult aliens began to feel the effect of the lullaby. The Vrex warriors found their aggressive postures relaxing. The crystalline adults' energy fields became more stable. The HFY elders' water rippled in time with the melody. "This is impossible," whispered Commander Thok as he watched the recording in the council chamber. "How can simple vocal sounds affect multiple species in this way?" Dr. Yuna Kim paused the playback. "Music is one of humanity's oldest forms of communication. A mother's lullaby contains something deeper than words. It carries emotions, comfort, and love in a way that speaks to the heart of any intelligent being." Above ground, the human rescue operations were reaching their most dangerous phase. The Ravagers had broken through the outer defenses and were moving through the colony in organized groups. They were looking for valuable prisoners and resources to steal. Han Wu and his engineering team had successfully stabilized the reactor, but now they faced a new problem. The Ravager boarding party was heading straight for the reactor bay. If the pirates gained control of the power systems, they could hold the entire colony hostage. "We need to evacuate," Yunmi said, watching the security monitors. "They will. Be here in 5 minutes." But Han Wu was studying the reactor control systems. "Not yet. I can set up a feedback loop in the power grid. If the Ravagers try to use our own systems against us, they will get a very unpleasant surprise." His fingers worked quickly over the control panels. He was programming the reactor to overload if anyone without proper authorization tried to access it. It was dangerous work. One mistake could cause the explosion they were trying to prevent. "Han Wu," Yunmi said urgently. "They are in the corridor. Outside." "Almost finished," he replied, sweat dripping from his forehead. "Just need 30 more seconds." The door to the reactor bay exploded inward. The Ravager boarding party stormed in with weapons ready. The 6-armed captain saw the humans at the control stations and smiled with his knife-like teeth. "Step away from the controls, humans," the captain ordered. "This facility now belongs to the Ravager fleet." Han Wu hit the final command sequence and stepped back with his hands raised. "The reactor is yours, Captain, but I should warn you about something." The Ravager captain approached the main control panel. "Warn me about what, weak human?" "The reactor has been configured for human. Biometric access only," Han Wu explained calmly. "If anyone else tries to operate it, the magnetic containment field will collapse. The resulting explosion will destroy this entire star system." The captain's smile faded. He had expected the humans to surrender immediately. Instead, they had turned their own technology into a weapon. "You are bluffing," Han Wu shrugged. "Try it and find out. But you might want to evacuate your ships first." In the medical bay, Sun Jia faced her own confrontation with the Ravagers. She had successfully moved the elderly Vrex patient, Granak, to the emergency shelter, but the journey had been difficult. The building had partially collapsed behind them. Now a group of Ravager soldiers blocked their path to safety. The leader was a small but vicious creature, with poisonous spines covering its body. It spoke in the common galactic language with a hissing voice. "Medical supplies," it demanded. "Give us your healing equipment and drugs. They are valuable on the black market." Sun Jia stood protectively in front of Granak's medical bed. "These supplies are needed to keep patients alive. I cannot give them to you." The Ravager leader laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You cannot stop us, human. You are weak and outnumbered." "You are right," Sun Jia agreed. "I am weak and outnumbered, but I am also a doctor. I have sworn an oath to protect my patients, regardless of personal cost." She picked up a medical scanner and held it like a weapon. It was not designed for fighting, but her determination made it seem dangerous. "If you want these supplies, you will have to go through me first." The Ravager soldiers raised their weapons, but something in Sun Jia's eyes made them hesitate. She was not angry or afraid. She was simply resolved. Her willingness to die for her patients was something they had never seen before. Meanwhile, young Kyung-soo was carrying the crystalline child Bright Song through the damaged residential areas. The child's energy was still fading, but it seemed to respond to Kyung-soo's gentle care. "Stay with me, little one," he whispered as he navigated around fallen debris. "We are almost to the shelter." But their path was blocked by collapsed tunnel sections. The route to safety was completely cut off. Kyung-soo could hear the Ravagers searching nearby areas. Soon they would find him and the dying child. He activated his emergency radio. "This is Kyung-soo. I am trapped in section C7 with a crystalline child. The youngster needs immediate medical attention." The response was filled with static. "Kyung-soo, all rescue teams are evacuating. You need to find your own way out." Kyung-soo looked at the fading light of Bright Song. The child was trying to communicate something, but its energy was too weak. "I am not leaving without this child." He began to sing softly, the same lullaby that Hyojin was singing in the shelter far below. He did not know if crystalline beings could understand human music, but he hoped it would provide some comfort. To his amazement, Bright Song's light began to strengthen slightly. The familiar melody seemed to give the child something to focus on, a reason to keep fighting. In the underground shelter, Hyojin continued her lullaby even as explosions grew closer. The Ravagers had found the entrance and were working to break through the sealed doors. Everyone knew they had only minutes before the pirates broke in, but instead of panicking, the people in the shelter had found an unexpected peace. The children of all species were calm. The adults were no longer arguing or fighting. They faced their fate together, united by the simple human song. "The human female continues to make noise," observed a Vrex warrior. "But it is strange. I find myself less afraid when she sings." An Aquari elder rippled thoughtfully. "The sound patterns create harmonious brain waves. It is like a natural drug that reduces stress and fear." A crystalline adult pulsed gently. "It reminds us that even in darkness there can be beauty. Even in fear there can be hope." The sealed doors began to crack under the Ravager assault. Bright lights from cutting tools showed through the gaps. Everyone knew the end was near, but Hyojin did not stop singing. She held her daughter close, and continued the lullaby about the little rabbit finding its way home. Her voice remained steady and clear even as death approached. "Why does she not scream?" asked Commander Thok in the council chamber. "Why does she not beg for mercy?" Dr. Yuna Kim smiled sadly. "Because she is doing something more important than saving herself. She is giving everyone else the gift of peace in their final moments. She is showing them that even when everything is lost, love remains." On the screen, the shelter doors finally gave way. Ravager soldiers poured in with weapons, ready. They expected to find terrified prisoners begging for their lives. Instead, they found something they had never seen before. They found courage made manifest in the form of a human mother singing to her child, while surrounded by the children of a dozen different species, all of them calm and unafraid. The Ravager captain who led the assault team stopped in confusion. This was not how prisoners were supposed to behave. Where was the fear? Where was the panic that made capture so easy? And in that moment of hesitation, everything changed. The rescue ships arrived. The rescue ships came like angels of war through the smoke and fire above Kepler 442b. But these were not military vessels. They were civilian transports, mining ships, and cargo haulers. Every human in the star system had heard the distress call from the colony. Every human ship had turned toward the battle. Pilot Min Ho led the desperate rescue mission into the heart of the Ravager attack. His overloaded transport ship shook and rattled as enemy fire lit up the sky around them. Behind him flew 12 other human vessels, all racing toward the trapped survivors below. "This is madness," his co-pilot Hei Rin said as explosions bloomed around their ship. "We are flying directly into the enemy fleet." Min Ho's hands were steady on the controls. "Then we better fly fast." The human ships used a tactic that no military academy would teach. Instead of fighting the Ravagers, they simply ignored them. They flew straight through the enemy formations, taking damage but never stopping. Their only goal was to reach the people trapped below. In the underground shelter, the Ravager assault team had hesitated when they saw the strange scene of calm among their prisoners. That hesitation cost them everything. The moment of confusion gave the rescue teams the time they needed. Explosions echoed from above as the human ships began their assault on the Ravager positions. But these were not precision military strikes. They were desperate attacks by civilian pilots who had never been trained for combat. Engineer Han Wu used the moment of distraction to his advantage. While the Ravager captain was trying to understand why the human woman kept singing, Han Wu reactivated the reactor control systems. The feedback loop he had programmed sent power surges through every Ravager device connected to the colony's electrical grid. Sparks flew from Ravager weapons and communication equipment. The pirates found themselves suddenly blind and defenseless in the middle of enemy territory. "What did you do?" the six-armed captain roared at Han Wu. Han Wu smiled calmly. "I gave the rescue teams a fighting chance. The reactor is now operating, under human control again. Your weapons and ships are experiencing what we call a really bad day." In the medical bay, Sun Jia's confrontation with the Ravager soldiers ended differently than anyone expected. When the power surge hit their weapons, the pirates found themselves facing an unarmed human doctor who refused to back down. "Your weapons are disabled," Sun Jia observed quietly. "Mine are not." She held up her medical scanner. It was still just a diagnostic tool, but the Ravagers did not know that. More importantly, they could see something in her eyes that they had never encountered before. "You would die for these patients," the spiny Ravager leader said with confusion. "They are not. Even your species." Sun Jia nodded. "Yes, I would die for them. But more importantly, I would live for them. I would work every day to keep them healthy and happy. That is what humans do. We care for others." The Ravager soldiers looked at each other uncertainly. In their culture, strength came from taking what you wanted. They had never met someone who found strength in giving everything away. Throughout the colony, similar scenes played out. Human rescue workers arrived not as conquering heroes but as ordinary people doing extraordinary things. They pulled survivors from collapsed buildings. They shared their food and water with aliens who had nothing left. They risked their lives, again and again for beings they barely knew. Young Kyung-soo finally reached safety with the crystalline child Brightsong. The youngster's light had grown stronger during their journey together. When they arrived at the evacuation ships, adult crystallines rushed forward to help their child. "You saved our young one," said the crystalline elder, its voice like wind chimes. "We are in your debt." Kyung-soo shook his head. "No debt. Bright. Song is just a child. Children should be protected no matter what species they are." The crystalline elder pulsed thoughtfully. "You risked your life for a being you had never met before. Why?" "Because it was the right thing to do," Kyung-soo replied simply. The most dramatic rescue happened in the underground shelter. When the human rescue teams broke through to reach the trapped survivors, they found a scene that would be remembered across the galaxy. Jin was still singing her lullaby. The Ravager soldiers stood frozen in confusion, their disabled weapons useless in their hands. Around the shelter, children of 12 different species sat quietly, listening to the human song with peaceful expressions. The rescue team leader was a woman named Jin Ae. She had served in the human merchant marine for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like this. "Everyone stay calm," she announced. "We are here to get you out safely." The Ravager captain tried to regain control of the situation. "These are our prisoners," he snarled. "We claimed them under the laws of conquest." Jin Ae looked at the pirate with contempt. "There are no laws of conquest here. There are only people who need help and people who are willing to give it." The evacuation took 3 hours. Every single person in the shelter was rescued. The humans carried the wounded, helped the elderly, and made sure no one was left behind. They shared their food, water, and medical supplies with anyone who needed them. When the Ravager fleet finally retreated, they left behind their disabled ships and most of their equipment. But more importantly, they left behind a story that spread across the galaxy faster than light. The recording ended, and the Great Hall of the Galactic Federation fell silent. The alien representatives sat in their massive chairs trying to process what they had seen. Everything they thought they knew about humans had been turned upside down. Commander Thok of the Vrex was the first to speak. His voice was quiet and thoughtful. "We called them weak because they cry. But we observed something today. They cry and then they act. They feel fear and then they choose courage." He stood up slowly, his forearms gesturing as he spoke. "We said they were weak because they form attachments to others. But those attachments did not make them weaker. They made them stronger. They made them willing to risk everything for people they barely knew." Entity 7749 of the crystalline hive mind began to glow brighter. "We criticized their emotional responses. We said emotions made them unpredictable and dangerous. But their emotions did not decrease their effectiveness, they increased it." The entity paused, processing the data it had seen. They felt compassion for alien children. They felt duty toward alien patients. They felt responsibility for alien workers. Their emotions connected them to other species in ways we never imagined possible. Ocean singer Blue of the Aquari rippled thoughtfully in her tank. "We said they could not work together because they argued and disagreed. But when it mattered most, they worked together perfectly. They coordinated rescue operations across multiple locations without central command. They shared resources without being ordered to do so." The Voidwalker's shadow form shifted and flowed. "We mocked their short lifespans. We said they could not think long-term because they lived such brief lives. But perhaps their short time makes every moment more precious. Perhaps knowing they will die makes them more willing to live for others." The elder of the timekeepers phased in and out of different temporal streams. "We criticized their need for sleep, calling it a weakness. But maybe rest gives them something we do not have. Maybe dreams and quiet thoughts allow them to imagine better futures." One by one, each alien representative stood and acknowledged what they had learned about humanity. The species that had seemed weakest had shown strength beyond measure. The beings who cried had shown courage beyond understanding. Finally, the great judge, the ancient being of pure energy, spoke with a voice that echoed through time itself. "Dr. Yuna Kim of Earth, we have reviewed your evidence. We have seen your people in their moment of greatest trial. the energy being pulsed with different colors as it continued. We expected to see weakness. Instead, we saw strength we did not recognize. We expected to see fear. Instead, we saw love made manifest in action. Dr. Yuna Kim stood up from her small wooden chair. She looked tiny compared to the alien representatives around her, but she no longer seemed weak or out of place. "Honored members of the Galactic Federation," she said, "humanity does not ask to join your alliance because we are strong in the ways you understand strength. We ask because we are strong in ways you are only beginning to discover." She walked to the center of the great hall, her footsteps echoing in the silence. "You saw Hyejin sing to her child in that shelter, but did you notice what else happened? She sang to every child there, Vrex youngsters, crystalline children, Aquari babies. She made no distinction between species." Dr. Kim activated her simple device one more time. The screen showed the final moments of the rescue operation. Hyejin was walking toward the evacuation ship, still carrying So Young. But she was not alone. Children from every species in the shelter followed her, their parents close behind. "The song she sang was not a battle cry," Dr. Kim continued. "It was not a strategic communication. It was a simple lullaby about a small rabbit finding its way home safely through the forest. She sang it in Korean, a language most of the people in that shelter had never heard before. The screen showed the faces of the alien children as they listened to the human song. Their expressions were peaceful and calm despite the chaos around them. But somehow they all understood what it meant, Dr. Kim said softly. Because a mother's love for her child speaks a language older than words. It speaks to something deep inside every intelligent being. Commander Thok looked at the screen with new understanding. The other youngsters were comforted by a song meant for a human child. "Yes," Dr. Kim nodded, "because humans do not see alien children as alien. We see them as children who need protection and care. We do not see alien patients as different species. We see them as people who need healing. We do not see alien workers as competitors. We see them as colleagues who deserve help." Entity 7749 pulsed with realization. They extend their protective instincts to other species naturally, without training or programming. "That is correct," Dr. Kim agreed. "Humans have something you called weakness, but which is actually our greatest strength. We have the ability to expand our definition of family to include anyone who needs our help." She paused and looked around the great hall at each alien representative. "You asked why humans would risk their lives for beings they barely know. The answer is simple. We do not see you as beings we barely know. We see you as family we have not spent enough time with yet." The vote was called immediately. There was no debate, no discussion, no further questions. Every alien representative voted to grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Federation. But the great judge had one more announcement. "Dr. Yuna Kim, humanity is not just granted membership. You are granted special status as cultural ambassadors to the galaxy. Your people will teach other species what you have taught us today." "And what is that?" Dr. Kim asked. "That strength is not always about power," the great judge replied. "Sometimes strength is about knowing when to be gentle. Sometimes courage is not about fighting. Sometimes courage is about singing a lullaby in the darkness and trusting that someone will hear." 6 months later, across the galaxy, something beautiful was happening. In nurseries and schools on 1,000 different worlds, parents and teachers of dozens of species were learning a simple Korean lullaby. They sang it to their children at bedtime. They hummed it during difficult times. They taught it to their young ones as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, love could light the way home. On Earth, Hyejin continued her normal life as a colony administrator. But she received messages every day from across the galaxy. Alien parents thanked her for teaching them a new way to comfort their children. Medical workers wrote to tell her how the song helped patients stay calm during treatment. Teachers reported that alien students were learning human languages faster than ever before, starting with lullabies and children's songs. Diplomats discovered that difficult negotiations became easier when they remembered the lesson of the shelter, that caring for others is not weakness, but the foundation of all true strength. Dr. Yuna Kim kept a copy of the council recording on her desk. Sometimes, when she had difficult decisions to make, she would watch the moment when Hai-Jin began to sing. It reminded her that the most important human quality was not intelligence or strength or courage. It was the simple willingness to comfort a frightened child, regardless of what species that child happened to be. The galaxy was learning that humans were not weak because they cried. They were not fragile because they needed sleep. They were not inferior because they formed emotional attachments. They were human because they chose love over fear, hope over despair, and connection over isolation. They were human because when faced with the choice between saving themselves or saving others, they chose others every single time. And in a universe full of dangers and uncertainties, that choice made all the difference. The story of the lullaby in the war zone spread to every corner of the galaxy. It became a symbol of what intelligent beings could become when they chose compassion over conquest, protection over profit, and love over fear. Children across the galaxy fell asleep each night to the sound of a simple Korean song about a rabbit finding its way home. And in their dreams, they imagined a universe where every being was part of one great family, singing together in harmony among the stars.